So, to all you Templars out there, the sad bit of news is obviously that the majority of the Templar series now can't be bought, which is deeply irritating. It was just about a month ago that I had a bit of a steaming row with Simon & Schuster, because some years ago, when Fields of Glory had been out for a little while, I got a note from Simon & Schuster saying they wanted to halve my advances, and in future they weren't going to produce any hardbacks. They'd only have trade paperbacks because my books weren't selling. And I was deeply upset by that, because it's a grim thing to have your income halved, and it's even worse when you can see that people who collect the books and so on aren't going to be able to get the hardbacks they like. So I started doing some research, and it was very interesting, because when I went back through the Twitter feed and the Facebook feed that Simon & Schuster had, I suddenly discovered that out of all of the authors they'd got, my last book, when it came out, had received a grand total of 1 tweet in marketing. Nothing else whatsoever. Nothing on Facebook to announce the launch of the book. Nothing on Twitter to announce the launch of the book, in fact, because the only tweet they sent out was to say that I was going to a bookshop to do a signing, which was nice of them, but it would have been good to have a few other things as well. I keep looking up there because that's where the books are, and it reminds me which book I'm talking about. So I was really unhappy with that, and I went in with my agent, and we sat down with my editor, her assistant, the head of marketing, the head of publicity, and made our case that, really this was unacceptable. Well, the response came back that the advances were going to be halved, they weren't going to produce any more hardbacks, but they took our point, and it was unreasonable, and they would make sure that it didn't happen again. There would be more marketing future. That was that, basically. Then when the next book came out, the same thing happened again. There was 1 tweet. That was for Blood of the Innocents, which should have been a major success. I mean, the trilogy was extremely good. Fields of Glory, Blood on the Sand, Blood of the Innocents were all exceptionally, I think, good books. They worked extremely well as a sort of band of brothers based on the 100 Years' War and archers, and they should have sold much better than they did. But no one was told the books were coming out, so it's hardly surprising they didn't do very well. Then we had Pilgrim's War. And I was extremely angry by this stage, because I'd realised there was only 1 tweet again for the next book. So I went back. Now, this is typical of the world of publishing. When I went back, my editor had changed. Her assistant editor had become the editor. The head of marketing had left. The head of publicity had left. Neither of them had lasted in their jobs more than 9 months, as far as I can see. So I went in to make my case, and I said, "Oh no, so there was a big marketing campaign, and we did everything we possibly could." Well, they hadn't, because there was 1 tweet. So then, when Pilgrim's War came out, I monitored things fairly carefully. Again, no tweets, nothing on Facebook, no announcement about the launch or anything else. And I was, by this stage, seriously irritated, because not only had they halved my advances, they also put back publication of Pilgrim's War by many months, by 9 months. So I didn't get paid for that either. I'll come on to pay in a minute, because that's relevant too. So in the end, a month or so ago, it suddenly occurred to me that they still hadn't brought out the paperback of Pilgrim's War. It was supposed to come out 6 months after the hardback, and that was 18 months now. There was nothing happening. So I got my agent to contact the publisher and say, "When are you bringing out the paperback?" And they said, "Well, we haven't really thought about that yet." So that was a cause of real irritation. Now let's just look at this. When an author gets a book published by a publisher, the publisher will agree to pay an advance. An advance is a sum of money. but it's only an advance against future royalties. In effect, it's an interest-free loan. So the author gets paid, say, £20,000. That doesn't mean that when he signs on the dotted line, he's paid £20,000 to go away and write a book. To give an example, when I first signed up with Headline, I had The Last Templar, but they gave me a £10,000 advance. This was going back to 1994 when they signed me up, but even then it was peanuts. Because £10,000 was not a lump sum given to me. I got paid, I think from memory, well, what they tend to do is they'll pay you in stage payments. So they sign you up on a contract, you'll get a quarter of the money then. You get a quarter when you submit a manuscript, you get a quarter when the hardback comes out, and you get a quarter when the paperback comes out. So let's just say I today sign a contract with a publisher. I'll get a quarter. If it's, say it's £4,000, I get £1,000 now. When I submit the manuscript in 6 months' time, I'll get another £1,000. When the hardback comes out, which would be 6 months to a year after that, I'll get another £1,000. So now you're looking at then 6 months. That's 18 months away potentially, and then 6 months to a year after that, a paperback would come out. So that could be 2.5 years away when I get the final payment. £4,000 in 2.5 years is not great pay by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not pay; it's advances. So any royalties that come in from the books have to pay back those advances before I get paid anything at all. Okay, so when a publisher like Simon & Schuster decides to defer publishing a book, that's deferring my income by a year. If they defer and don't bring out a paperback, that's deferring my income even further. Absolutely ridiculous. So when an author gets paid, again, going back to my first book, The Last Templar, I had a manuscript for that. So they paid me £3,000 advance for The Last Templar, which was £1,000 for signing a contract. A year later, I would get another £1,000 when the hardback came out, and then 9 months after that, I'd get the last £1,000 when the paperback came out. But I had to pay back that £3,000. It wasn't income, it was an interest-free loan. So I had to wait until 3 books were on the shelves. So I had to wait until I'd written Merchant's Partner and A Moorland Hanging. And only when those 3 books were on the bookshelves, I thought, would I be likely to get some money back. And I was right, it actually took me 4.5 years before I started earning any income at all out of my writing, apart from the advances, the loans. So it takes a long time to earn money, and the amount of money you earn is absolute peanuts. So let's put it like this. Back in the 1990s, when I sold a hardback, I'd get 10% of the cover price. So in those days it would be £15.99, so £16. That meant I'd be paid £1.60 per hardback sold. If I sold a paperback, I got 7.5% of the cover price. On the books then they were £5.99, I think. It meant I was basically getting paid about 42p. The way things have changed now is that authors are paid on net receipts. So because of Amazon and the big bookshop retailers demanding huge discounts, only what the publishers get in from the retailers is considered as the income. So whereas I used to get 10% of the cover price, now I get 10% of whatever the publisher gets in for the book. Take the easy example, Amazon. Amazon demands an 80% discount. The publishers therefore get net receipts of 20%, so I'm paid on 10% of 20% of the cover price. So whereas it used to be I'd get paid on, let's say, present day, a £20 hardback, whereas in the past I'd have got £2 for a book sale, now I get 40p. In the same way, if you work out through the numbers, I get 7.5% of the net receipts for a paperback. Well, a paperback costing nowadays £9 or so. Basically, 7.5% of net receipts means I'll be lucky to get about 15p. So author incomes have absolutely collapsed in the last 5-6 years. It's possible to make that up if you increase the number of sales, obviously. But if the publishers aren't doing anything to do the marketing, there's no way you can make up the money. So that's why I'm looking to diversify. Which all brings me back to the interesting thing about getting the problem with Simon & Schuster. About a month ago, they said, OK, fair enough, we haven't really done the job. So I said, well, OK, if you agree that, let me have the rights back to those books so I can sell them again somewhere else. They said, all right. And they sent me the reversion letters, which means that the rights have now reverted to me. So I now have all the books from The Last Templar to The Devil's Acolyte, and from The Oath to Templar's Acre in the Templar series, plus the trilogy, the Vintner trilogy, Fields of Glory, Blood on the Sand, Blood of the Innocents, plus Pilgrim's War. All of those books are now mine once more, which is great, except it is now impossible to buy them from anyone, because Simon & Schuster have already pulped, they've destroyed all of the old hard copies, so the only copies available anywhere are the ones that were on the internet. They've taken those down because the rights have reverted to me, but they haven't given me the files so that I can put the books back up again and earn money for myself. So I'm now trying to get the files back from Simon & Schuster so that I can put the books up. It is quite likely that they've lost them, or that they've destroyed them, or that they're just grumpy that I've taken rights back and so they don't want me to have them, so they won't, because they just want to make life difficult. In which case, I don't know how long it'll be before I can get the books all re-edited, reproofed and replaced on the internet. I'm basically giving them this week to try to discover where all the files are. If they can't get them this week, next week I'm going to have to instruct my agent to start seeing if we can sell them elsewhere. It may well be that the best thing I can do is go to another publisher, try to get a reasonable deal from them and try to get the books done that way. Then the publisher will spend the money to get them reconverted so that they're suitable for electronic publication as ebooks, and it takes a lot of the grief away. The alternative could be that I actually get them done myself and put them up on the internet myself. That's fine, but it's a very expensive process and it's not easy. And the question I've got is it worth it for me, for the extra money I'd make per sale, bearing in mind the reduced sales I'd get because of not having a publisher behind them? Or is it better for me to put them straight out to, let's say, Headline, take them back to Headline and say, OK, you had them before, you can have them again. Would you take them on, please? And accept the fact that I'd get paid peanuts again per sale, but Headline being Headline, they may well push the whole series and we might get increased sales. I just don't know. So watch this space. It's going to be very interesting times. In the meantime, and as soon as I've finished recording and editing this, I've got to get back to my wonderful, massive book, which is One Last Dance Before I Die. Here you go. This is what a manuscript looks like. It's a big one. But I think it's also a book that's going to work. It's rather like the Templar series because it's very much a crime but looked at from the point of view of all of the suspects and the guilty party, as well as looking at things from the point of view of the detective. I did try to write it originally as a first-person book. It was all, the detective was me. I was going to this, I saw this girl, I was looking at this scene and so on. But it didn't quite hack it. I don't know why. It's very strange. When I look at my gorgeous, I have to admit, I do love these books, Blackjack, Bloody Mary series. I love them. They make me laugh. I'm entertained while I'm writing them, which makes a huge difference, especially now because I've got to write one before the end of the year. But I like those books. They're straightforward and the stories roll off the fingertips. It was much more difficult with Shanghai, and the reason why, I think, was because it's a much more convoluted murder. It's going back to my early Templar series type books. Bit more gritty, a bit more edgy, I think is the term. There's a lot more sex and drugs, because it's Shanghai, it's what you expect. But it is a fascinating city. It was a really enjoyable book to write. It's currently at 155,000 words, which is far too big. It needs to be culled by about 30,000 words. So I've got a few scenes I've got to take out. I think I know which scenes they're going to be now, though, and that's going to make it a much more taut, strong, easy read, I think. But that's all got to be finished in the next 2 weeks, because I must crack on with the next Blackjack. So hopefully, next time I fire up this camera and I'm talking to you, I will have news on what's going to happen to the Templar series. I'll have finished this book and had that sent off, and I'll be cracking on with the next Bloody Mary Blackjack book. Wish me luck. I think I'm going to need it this time around. If you've got any questions, do please send them in. More than happy to talk to anybody who's got questions about my work. And apart from that, thanks a lot for watching. Thanks very much for your patronage, because it is, especially this year, making a huge difference having something to fall back on with this total lack of income. And basically, thanks a lot, and I'll speak to you again soon. Cheers, take care.